Coming up on Talking Points, the president has said no to ground forces to fight the Islamic State, but some of his top commanders say boots on the ground could still be an option. Also tonight, we take a closer look at the Ray Rice scandal and some more troubles for the NFL. And we'll have an update on Decision 2014 with our political correspondent, Alex Amico. But first, homelessness is becoming a major issue in Syracuse. We have a special panel on the show to break it down. Talking Points starts right now. Hello and welcome to another edition of Talking Points. I'm Nick Cardona. Today we investigate tensions between business owners and the homeless population in Syracuse. Can a fair balance be struck between humanitarian needs and business interests? Joining me now, Talking Points correspondent Molly Smith, Paul Driscoll, the Commissioner of Neighborhoods and Business Development at City Hall, and John Tomino, President of In My Father's Kitchen. Welcome to you all. Good to have you here.
Thanks.
So first I want to turn it to Molly and just have you give us an overview of what you've been reporting on in the past couple of days about this situation in Syracuse as a whole.
Well, Nick, homelessness is not a new issue in Syracuse. This has been around for many years, but what is new is that we're really just starting to talk about it now. That many different city departments and the Coalition for the Homeless are really coming together now to bring this issue to light. And a lot of it really started when a local business owner, he has really become the outspoken member of the community to bring to light the economic impact of the homeless on his business in particular, and how nationally homelessness really is an economic issue and it's not just a social problem.
Now, I want to turn it over to Paul Driscoll about why is this what's going on in Syracuse? Why is this local issue becoming such a a heated debate in this area?
Well, Molly's right. This business owner really brought to light with an open letter to the mayor about the problems he's been facing with the homeless folks across the street from his business, and that caused City Hall to gather the agencies that it funds to combat this problem and really get a handle on the scope of the issue. So I think that's the stage that we're in right now, is trying to understand the population and the different tiers within the homeless population and how we can assist them in many ways. So
now, John, I want to talk about you mentioned to me before we started here that people are not looking at the homeless as actual people. Right. Is that just a problem that's only existing in a couple of cases, or do you think it's a bigger problem?
Well, I think it's a problem. Like we use a tagline to our friends under the bridge: "You're not invisible." And I think sometimes society doesn't want to look at it, even though it is a visible thing. You kind of turn a blind eye to it. And because of what happened with Mr. Kupperman at Smith's Restaurant Supply, now all of a sudden it's become visible in a different capacity. So the great thing that I found out that's happening about that, it's getting people talking, and we're even sitting here because of that. So I think that's a good thing. It's a win.
What do you think the strategy should be going forward to attack this issue?
Well, I think like Paul said, there's a coalition of organizations that are together, and they're getting funded through a federal government via the city to us. And if that is happening, then let's get dialogue happening. Let's get organizations collaborating together for the win of the individual under the bridge, but then also for the win of the business owner, and then it's a win for the city as well.
Now, Molly, I want to talk about this as a national issue that's also being talked about, not only in Syracuse but across the country. What can you tell us about that?
I think that, like what we've been saying, there's not really a one-size-fits-all solution for homelessness, and that each case really needs to be taken on an individual basis, and there's not really one way that we can just address homelessness as a national issue, that different populations are addressing it in different ways. For example, out in Hawaii, that there's a strategy to put all of the homeless together on a particular island, on the chain of islands in Hawaii. And I mean, obviously here in Syracuse, that's really not an option that's available to us, but there are just different ways that we need to think about, and really getting these different city groups and civil groups together is how we're going to come up with a solution.
Now that solution is interesting. Putting them all on an island is definitely a drastic, it's a scary proposition for a lot of people. Now, do you think that, going back to that, example, do you think that kind of will just kind of eradicate the problem and not, focus on, what we need to assimilate these people back into society? Do you think that will tackle the problem, or do you think that's just an interesting proposition?
Well, for my opinion would be that it's just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. I mean, for the city and for the business guy, that works because there's not a problem anymore, but then you really didn't deal with the core issue of the human being. So I think if we lose fact that these people are humans, they're people that are just broken, you know, what are we going to do to fix them, to make them assimilate back in if they can? You know, some of them can't assimilate in, some of them have mental illness and physical disabilities. But there are a remnant of them who can be rehabilitated and made productive again. And what about if that guy who gets turned around ends up being a guy who's working in that business who at one time he was maybe being a detriment to?
Now, Paul, what's the next step for Syracuse? What's the next step for this issue? How are they going to tackle it going forward?
Well, like I said, we were trying to get a handle on the scope of the problem, and we heard a lot of interesting numbers throughout this discussion about, you know, what's going on in Syracuse. They're talking about last night over 500 people were sheltered who are officially homeless in one of the city's various shelters. And 90% of those 500 people are one-time recipients of that need, and the other 10% cycle through the system a lot. And the issues with Mr. Kupperman and Smith Restaurant Supply focus on a different population of what we think are about 25 to 30 people that won't avail themselves to even the shelter. So, like I said, there's different tiers of this subpopulation of homeless that we need to address differently. We need to try to incite folks that don't want shelter to avail themselves of these services that are available, and we need to continue to put other folks that are coming to the shelters on a trajectory that they can be incorporated back into productive society and on their own, and not be reliant on shelters or government aid perpetually. So I think the point that we found is that we have a strong network of homeless service providers, and for the most part, that network is working for 90% of those folks. It's the visible folks that we call them the hard-to-service population that we really are grappling with at the moment.
All right. Well, John Tomino, Paul Driscoll, thank you guys for
Thank you so much.
and Molly, thank you again for your work on this. Coming up, the House has approved President Obama's proposal to arm moderate Syrian rebels to fight ISIS, and the Senate is expected to follow suit. We've got our International Roundtable team standing by. Stay with us.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Learning how to kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Now it's time for This Week in Bad Stats.
Bad stats?
Horrible stats. Here goes. 132.
That's how many batters struck out 4 times in one game last season.
Wow, very good. Here's a tough one, though. 3 and 4.
No idea.
That's how many kids witness bullying. 3 out of 4.
That's not a good stat.
No, it's not, but it can change. Kids want to help, but they don't know how. Visit stopbullying.gov and give them the tools they need to help prevent bullying.
There are plenty of safe ways kids can help at stopbullying.gov.
Welcome back. Joining us now to talk more about the president's overall strategy to fight the Islamic State, militants are Talking Points correspondents John Tomino and Claire Moran, who have been monitoring this issue for the last couple of weeks. John, Claire, good evening to you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thanks for having us.
I want to talk about, John, I'll direct this question to you, just an overall overview of the strategy going forward.
Well, as we talked about last week on Talking Points, the president's strategy really doesn't involve American boots on the ground. He has sent 1,600 military personnel to Iraq, but these are only in an advisor capacity. He's really not trying to send any American troops over there if possible. He really wants to see NATO forces and other coalitions work together to put troops on the ground, and also, as you said, are going to arm Syrian rebels and have them try to take out ISIS in Syria.
Now, Claire, I want to go over, because the president says, he doesn't want boots on the ground. He doesn't want our boots on the ground, is what he's saying.
Right.
Now, General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, came out and said that it is a possibility for American forces to eventually, ground forces be deployed into to fight the Islamic State. Do you think that this is going to be a possibility going forward, or no?
I mean, there's all kinds of military officials and congressmen coming out in support of this, but I just don't think that President Obama is going to want to go there after the Iraq War and all the time we spent there and all of the problems that we had. I mean, we spent $12 billion per month on the war by 2008. That's what we were spending. And I don't think President Obama wants to spend that money or put those American lives in danger, but he may have to.
Now, I mean, this overall, it's not disagreement with each other between the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and President Obama. It's not disagreement. It's just kind of a disagreement on where this is going, what the future holds for this. Do you see any rift in these next 2 years between the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the president? What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't really think that there's necessarily a rift. What General Dempsey is trying to say is that, look, if this strategy doesn't pan out, if air power isn't enough to take out ISIS alone, there's many people in the military sphere that are saying that that's the case, then he's going to call for the president to reevaluate the decisions. And he says, what he said is that President Obama told him that we're going to look at things on a case-by-case basis. So it seems like the president's on board with what General Dempsey is thinking from what he said.
Go ahead, Claire.
I was going to say, General Dempsey was very careful to say we're not putting groups on the ground now. We just may look at it if circumstances change in the future.
Now, I mean, this whole thing is, it brings back a scary economic message to the American people. I mean, this is, Americans are war weary. We talked about this extensively. What are the economic impacts for this? How is the United States going to effectively, combat ISIS? If they don't have the means to if they don't want to put boots on the ground, and are they going to have to raise money themselves? How's that going to work out?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at what they're doing right now, and NBC News had some numbers here, experts have told them that the government is going to spend $100 million a week on air targets if Syria is involved. Or as of right now, they're spending about $7.5 million per day in Iraq, which leads to about $50 million a week. So if they're going to cross over into Syria and start doing campaigns over there, you're going to double the cost effectively of that. That could lead to $5 billion a year going towards, these airstrikes. So if they were to put boots on the ground, obviously the price tag is going to increase. Do they want to do that? Absolutely not. For that reason alone, I would think.
Now, I want to talk about, obviously this is a political, this has political impact. Definitely for the midterm elections and for 2016. Obviously, John Kerry said this is a war with ISIS that is going to last, post President Obama. It's going to last more than 2 years. What implications does this have politically that we need to be paying attention to? John, I'll throw that to you.
Well, you would think Hillary Clinton is going to be the first to pounce on this by saying that I was a statesman for this country. I was the Secretary of State. I know how we should handle our foreign policy and how we should do these things. And knowing that her husband was Bill Clinton, who's already handled coming off of the Gulf War after post-President H.W. Bush and things along those lines. So she knows what she has to do in order to kind of capitalize off this. But I definitely think it's going to be a huge factor in the 2016 race. Obviously, ISIS doesn't necessarily show signs of going away. I know General David Petraeus says that it's not as big as a threat. It's actually weaker than Al-Qaeda was. But there's a lot of people who are concerned by the power of ISIS, and they want to see it gone. And I think that there's going to be a lot of talk about this in the next couple of years.
Are Republicans at all capitalizing on this? Is this helping Republicans? Is this going to help them in the midterms, or is this going to help them in 2016?
What John Boehner's been saying is that it's this is not a strategy. F-16s in the air is not really a strategy, and he's demanding that we have strategy. So I think what the Republican angle is they want to come up with a better plan. Mm-hmm. They don't really think this is much of a plan for President Obama. I think it's more of an idea or a concept that's very vague, and they want to do something concrete. And that's probably their best bet if they want to really show off what they stand for as far as this is concerned.
Claire, what do you think?
I was just going to say, pretty much every member of Congress has come forward with what they say on this. They had a vote in Congress about whether to arm the rebels in Syria. And all these Congress members have been coming out saying what they think so that they can have that talking point for the future elections. But I think Boehner's opposition is definitely important to keep in mind as well.
All right, well, we're going to be following the story all throughout. John, Claire, thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Up next, the NFL is under fire this week. 3 players face major punishment for abuse allegations. What this means for the league's future. Stay with us.
About 1 in 5 Americans is living with a disability. Over 50 million people, including many of our friends and neighbors, teachers and co-workers, heroes and leaders. 20 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act guaranteed every person the right to live, work, and participate fully in the American experience. We've come a long way since then, and we are committed to making even more progress in the years ahead. Visit disability.gov to see how you can help.
You realize that 49 million Americans struggle with hunger? That's 1 out of every 6 Americans. These people are around us every day. They're our friends, they're our co-workers, their kids go to school with our kids. Sometimes we're not even aware that they're struggling. This problem is closer than you think. But so is the solution.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
We are different. Society should aspire to be more like us.
Be part of the first class. Get energized. Get outside.
Hold on, guys. It's gonna get bumpy.
And get moving. Experience the power of physical activity. Join the movement at ActionHeroAlliance.com.
Welcome back to Talking Points. The NFL is cracking down on domestic abuse, and members of Congress are speaking out. Joining me now is Talking Points correspondent Will Gerhard. Will, good evening to you.
Nick, thanks for having me on.
Now, I want to, go over this timeline of the Ray Rice scandal. Can you take us through that?
Right. So there's, of course, been way too many domestic violence cases with the NFL lately, but Ray Rice has been the big one. February 15th, he and his then fiancée Janae Palmer get in this altercation at a casino in Atlantic City. Both of them are arrested and charged with simple assault. 4 days later, TMZ releases a video of Ray Rice dragging Janae Palmer out of the elevator. A little over a month after that, Rice and Palmer get married. So whatever happened in the elevator, didn't really get in between their relationship. And one of the biggest dates here is June 16th. Ray Rice and Roger Goodell met at league headquarters in New York City. From that meeting, they just said that they were on good terms, that the meeting went well, that a punishment would be issued, but there was not much information after that. The Ravens were fully supportive of Rice, so it looked good for him going forward. On July 24th, the NFL announces that Ray Rice will be suspended for 2 games. That's all the information we knew before the second video came out. Once the second video came out, the spiral just took an awful turn for the worst. September 8th, TMZ releases the surveillance footage of Ray Rice physically striking Janae Palmer. A brutal hit. It was very graphic. The Ravens immediately terminate Ray Rice's contract. Ray Rice is suspended by the NFL. Roger Goodell claims that this is the first time he saw the video. So at that point, things just seem to be okay. 2 days later, on September 10th, the Associated Press reports that a law enforcement official sent the NFL the video from inside the elevator on April 9th, which was over a full month before Rice and Goodell met. Goodell was relatively silent about the issue, but then 2 days later, on September 12th, a female employee at the NFL confirmed that the video had arrived on April 9th. So this was just a whole big sticky mess for the NFL now that all this new information came out.
Now, the new video is out. What does this mean for the NFL? What are the next steps going forward for them?
Well, legally, surprisingly legally, the NFL is fine. There's no real punishments that they will see. The shield of the NFL is obviously tarnished forever. Their reputation is severely damaged by this awful by this awful incident. And the NFL as an American institution, they really put their brand and their name in jeopardy. It's been evident with all these cases that the NFL really doesn't have their priorities straight with all of this. There's no real set of checks and balances within the NFL. A lot of the punishments have been varied from other similar cases, and most recently, politicians have been outspoken about the issue because it has been such a problem.
Our own senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand, as well.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand recently spoke out about the issue. Take a listen here.
We are now looking to the commissioner to enforce a zero-tolerance policy. But the broader issue, Bob, is this institutional support, this chronic institutional support, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the U.S. military, whether it's the college campus, where the institution gathers and surrounds their star player, their golden boy, whomever it may be, without any regard for the victim and survivors, without any regard for women.
So this is obviously Kirsten Gillibrand is our own senator from New York, and she's been outspoken. She's been speaking about this issue for a long time since she got into the Senate. What does this, has this been an ongoing issue for the NFL?
Well, the bottom line here is that the NFL has not been getting this right at all. If we look at a couple fines and suspensions here, Michael Crabtree of the 49ers was fined $5,500 for wearing blue cleats against the Cowboys. Peyton Manning was fined over $8,000 for swearing at an opposing player. Brandon Merriweather was suspended 2 games, the same amount of time as Rice was originally suspended for this domestic violence issue, and Brandon Merriweather was fined over $100,000 for an illegal hit. Ray Rice was fined only $58,000. There's obviously a tremendous disconnect between the punishments and what happened. Rice's incident was labeled as a, quote, conduct detrimental to the league. The only other player that received that was Nigel Bradham, and he was only suspended for 1 game, and that was because of possession of marijuana at a traffic stop on August 13th. So there's a lot of these varying issues that vary tremendously on the severity of them that have been getting similar punishments. And it's just put a really bad look on the NFL. There's been no enforced system to keep their players in check, and there's this domestic abuse case has been going on for so long.
Now, do you think, Roger Goodell has been at the center of this controversy, a center of this controversy and controversies since he took office, and I believe it was 2006 when he took the reins as commissioner. Is he, do you think he should step down? He's been, people have been calling on him to resign. They say Condoleezza Rice should be his replacement, which is an interesting choice. Do you think he should resign?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's definitely going to be an interesting road for Roger Goodell in the future. Since he's been commissioner, 56, now 57 actually, players have been charged with domestic abuse of some sort. Recently, California Rep. Jackie Speier highlights an even more startling point. You can take a listen here.
Of the 56 football players arrested for domestic violence, they only saw a combined 13 games suspended. The NFL would rather see these players on the field than take a stance against violence. After all, anything for football. I say bench them.
Powerful words from her.
Absolutely, Nick. And so she said that when there's 56 cases, there are now 57. Of those 57 cases, 10 players were cut from their teams, 12 players were fined. That leaves 34 open cases where the NFL has not issued a punishment. They've implemented a newer, more comprehensive domestic abuse policy, but Roger Goodell certainly has his work cut out for him.
All right, well, obviously we'll be following this story as it gets, and I'll have my op-ed as well as on the NFL as a whole domestic abuse problem in that league. So thank you, Will.
Nick, thank you.
All right. When we come back, a look at where the latest midterm elections are heating up and a closer look at the problem facing the NFL. We'll be back.
So I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Look, he's blushing.
Welcome to my block party. Glad you can make it.
The only triple doubles you get come with fries.
Last time you blocked someone, you were online.
I can do this all day. Your moves are just gay.
Using gay to mean dumb or stupid, not cool.
Not cool. Not in my house, not anywhere.
It's not creative.
It's offensive to gay people.
And you're better than that.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Talking Points political correspondent Alex Amico. Alex, we had some interesting developments in the Kansas race. Let's break that down.
So Senator Pat Roberts is a Republican from Kansas, and he's been serving in Congress for 6 terms. Kansas has had Republican senators since 1932. He had a difficult primary this year. He was challenged by a Tea Party-backed opponent who portrayed him as a Washington insider. There was a big controversy over whether or not he actually lived in Kansas. They said that he only rented his house in Kansas but lived in D.C. He ended up surviving the primary, but only with 48% of the vote. So after the primary, it looked like it was going to be a solid Republican seat. But then independent candidate Greg Orman started to gain a lot of fundraising. He's a successful businessman. He started to get a lot more support, and it started to make it a pretty interesting race. But then a big development was the nominated Democrat, Chad Taylor, dropped out of the race. The Kansas Secretary of State originally refused to take his name off the ballot, but just on Thursday, he was ordered by the state Supreme Court to remove his name from the ballot. Democrats may still be forced to nominate another candidate under Kansas election laws, but the Orman campaign has released a statement saying, quote, "No matter who's on or off the ballot, Greg Orman is running as an independent against the broken system in Washington."
So Greg Orman, obviously, if he's an independent, so what happens, say he does win? What happens? Does he caucus with Democrats? Does he caucus with Republicans? Or do we not know yet?
There's really no way to tell right now. It's difficult to say. He ran as a Democrat in the Senate election against Roberts a few years ago. He has said he would not vote for either of the current leaders of the parties, Harry Reid or Mitch McConnell. And it's looking like he actually may have a good shot at winning. So Democratic firm Public Policy Polling, a recent poll, has him leading Roberts 41-34. That poll did have Taylor on the ballot. And Taylor coming off the ballot does make a significant difference, it appears. One Fox News poll with Taylor on the ballot had Roberts getting 40% of the vote, Orman getting 38%, and Taylor getting 11%. Without Taylor on the ballot, Orman jumps to 48% of the vote, Roberts has 42%. So Taylor being off the ballot now, this new development with the Supreme Court, it really does boost his chances in the election this November.
All right, we'll be following this all throughout election season. Alex, thanks. All right, well, finally tonight, we talked about the NFL earlier in the broadcast, and I want to touch on something that ESPN anchor Hannah Storm said on SportsCenter earlier this week. She talked about how the audience of the NFL is nearly 47% women, a statistic that the NFL seems to want to ignore. Some might say that they do this ignorantly, but I think they do it willingly. Here's the key phrase that summarizes what the NFL is and what it stands for. The National Football League caters to the audience it wants, not the audience it has. When 47% of your viewers are women, wouldn't you think the right thing to do would be to create an atmosphere that listens and pays attention to women's issues? There is an attitude among NFL players that this is a man's league and a man's got to do what a man's got to do, but that is the wrong message to send to the millions of women who watch this sport every week. Hannah Storm said it best. How is she going to explain to her daughters that this type of behavior is wrong and no woman should condone it any longer? She asked the question, what does the NFL stand for? What should it stand for? I echo Hannah Storm in her quest for answers. What type of audience does the NFL want to have, and what type of audience do they think they have? How many more cases of domestic violence, child abuse, and all-around neglect need to come up for the NFL to realize they have a problem? We will be talking about this issue all throughout the year, but that is it for this edition of Talking Points. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Have a good night, everybody.